chance. Tell me the truth. Who do you really work for?
I already told you, I'm a CIA analyst.
Yeah, right.
Unit 42, stand by. Federal confirmation received. The detained individual, Elijah Grant, is an active CIA analyst. Repeat, release immediately.
You might want to take those off.
The flashing blue lights came out of nowhere. 1 second, Elijah Grant was driving down a quiet Virginia highway after a long shift. The next second, 3 state trooper vehicles boxed him in like he was a wanted fugitive. Tires screeched. Doors slammed. Hands went to holsters. And before Elijah could even turn off his engine, a spotlight hit his face like an interrogation lamp. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments. And if stories like this pull you in and keep you thinking long after they're over, hit subscribe. It truly helps more than you know. Elijah kept both hands on the steering wheel. Calm, still, controlled. He had been trained for moments like this, just not like this. Trooper Liam Briggs approached first. Tall, square jaw, cold eyes. Behind him stood Trooper Wade Collier and Sergeant Harold Dunn. All 3 white, all 3 tense. Their faces carried that look Elijah had seen before, suspicion before facts. Briggs tapped his flashlight hard against Elijah's window. License and registration. His voice was flat, sharp, already annoyed. Elijah lowered the window slowly. Is there a problem, officer? You were weaving. I wasn't. Briggs' eyes narrowed. You calling me a liar? Elijah kept his tone steady. No, sir. I'm saying I was not weaving. Collier moved closer, shining his light into the back seat. Where you headed? Home. Where's that? Alexandria. Dunn circled the vehicle like he was inspecting stolen goods. The air felt heavy. Elijah could feel it. This wasn't about traffic. This was something else. Briggs leaned closer to the window, stepped out of the car. Am I being detained? That question changed everything. Collier let out a small laugh. Hear that? He knows the script. Briggs' face hardened. Step out of the car. Elijah stepped out slowly, hands visible, movements calm. Inside, his heart was pounding, not from fear, from frustration. He wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No flashy car, no loud music, nothing suspicious. Still, Briggs reached for the cuffs. For what reason? Elijah asked. Obstruction. Briggs snapped. Ain't resisting. I have not resisted. Dunn stepped closer. You people always say that. There it was. Not loud, not shouted, but clear. You people. Elijah felt the words settle in the air. Collier leaned in closer, voice low but cutting. We've been tracking drug traffic through this corridor all week. You fit the pattern. What pattern? Elijah asked quietly. Out-of-state plates. Late drive. Nervous behavior. I'm not nervous. Briggs tightened the cuffs hard. Too hard. Now you are. Metal clicked around Elijah's wrists. Driver slowed down the stair. Phones came out. Cameras recorded. Elijah stood straight, silent, watching. He noticed something small but important. Dunn kept glancing at the car's back window like he expected something inside. What exactly are you looking for? Elijah asked. Briggs didn't answer. Instead, Collier said, Pop the trunk. It's unlocked. They searched fast, too fast, like they expected to find something. They didn't. No drugs, no weapons. Just a laptop bag, a briefcase, a gym duffel. Dunn pulled out the briefcase. What's this? Work materials. What kind of work? Dunn asked. Elijah hesitated. Briggs noticed. That pause right there. That's guilt. It's confidential. Collier smirked. Confidential? Who are you, the president? Elijah looked directly at Briggs. I work in federal intelligence. The 3 men froze for half a second. Then Collier laughed out loud. Sure you do. Briggs' voice turned mocking. What agency? Elijah stayed quiet. Dunn leaned in close. That's what I thought. Briggs grabbed the briefcase. Open it. I can't. You can't. Briggs stepped closer. Or you won't. I'm not authorized to open it. Collier's tone shifted. You think you're smarter than us? No. Briggs' jaw tightened. You're coming in. For what charge? We'll figure that out downtown. The words were clear. They didn't have anything, but they were taking him anyway. As they guided him toward the cruiser, one bystander shouted, "He didn't do anything." Briggs barked back, "Keep moving." Elijah caught his reflection in the cruiser window. Calm face, steady eyes. But inside, something else was happening. He knew what this meant. His phone was still in the car. And in exactly 12 minutes, if he didn't check in through a secure channel, a red flag would trigger. Not a small one, a federal one. Inside the cruiser, Collier leaned from the front seat. "So what's your fake spy name?" he asked. Elijah didn't answer. Briggs started the engine. "You boys always think you're untouchable once you throw around big words." Elijah finally spoke, voice low. "I strongly suggest you contact your supervisor." Briggs chuckled. "We are the supervisors tonight." The cruiser pulled onto the road. Dunn followed behind in Elijah's vehicle. 7 minutes. That's how much time had passed. Elijah stared straight ahead. Collier turned in his seat slightly. "You don't look scared." "I'm not." Briggs smirked. "You will be." 9 minutes. They drove in silence. 10 minutes. Elijah's jaw tightened just slightly. 11 minutes. Collier noticed. "You got somewhere important to be." Elijah answered carefully. "Yes." 12 minutes. And somewhere far from that dark highway, inside a secure operations room in Langley, Virginia, a system alert flashed red. No check-in. No override. No clearance update. Elijah Grant, active. Status, unknown. Inside the cruiser, Briggs' radio suddenly crackled. Static. Then a voice. "Unit 42, confirm status on your traffic stop." Briggs grabbed the mic. "Routine stop. One suspect detained." Static again. Then the dispatcher's tone changed. "Unit 42, stand by." Briggs frowned. Collier looked at him. "What?" The radio crackled louder. Then another voice came through. Not the dispatcher this time. Calm, controlled, official. "Unit 42, this is Special Operations Command. You are currently detaining a federal intelligence officer. Immediately confirm the identity of Elijah Grant." Silence filled the cruiser. Briggs' hands tightened on the steering wheel. Collier's face drained of color. In the backseat, Elijah closed his eyes for just 1 second. It had begun, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. The radio crackled again. "Unit 42, stop all actions immediately. Do not proceed. Officer Elijah Grant is a CIA analyst. Active status confirmed. You are ordered to release immediately and maintain officer safety." Briggs froze. His knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. Collier leaned forward, jaw tight, staring at Elijah as if seeing him for the first time. Dunn's face went from smug to pale in seconds. Elijah sat back calmly, his hands still cuffed, eyes steady. "Do you understand what just happened?" he asked quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a knife. Briggs swallowed hard. I need verification." "You have it," Elijah said. "You just heard it. You're detaining the wrong man. Minutes ago, you accused me of crimes I didn't commit. And now, all three of you are speechless because the truth hit you faster than you expected." Collier finally turned away, looking at the passing trees outside the window. We were just doing our job," he muttered. His voice trembled slightly, betraying a mix of fear and embarrassment. Elijah's expression remained calm but sharp. "Doing your job doesn't give you the right to assume guilt based on the color of my skin, the time I'm driving, or the way I look. You were ready to throw me in a cell without asking a single intelligent question." Dunn opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Briggs for guidance. Briggs' hands trembled slightly as he fiddled with the radio, repeating the confirmation message over and over like he couldn't believe it. "You realize," Elijah continued, "that if I hadn't triggered the automatic check-in failure alert, your actions could have escalated into something far worse? You had no evidence. Nothing. Just assumptions and bias." Briggs tried to regain control. "We thought you fit the pattern. Late night driving. Out-of-state plates. Nervous behavior. Standard profiling." Elijah shook his head slowly. "Standard profiling? That's your excuse for racial profiling. You were ready to ruin my life without any investigation, just because of your assumptions about who I am." Collier's hands clenched the seat, knuckles white. We didn't know." His voice was barely above a whisper. "You didn't know, and yet you acted," Elijah said. "You didn't ask. You didn't investigate. You assumed. That's the real problem here. For a moment, silence filled the car. Only the sound of the engine humming remained. Each man was processing the gravity of the situation, realizing how close they came to making a life-altering mistake. Finally, Briggs spoke, voice tight. You could have gotten hurt if we handled this differently. The Legion's gaze fixed on him. I could have died, and you might have justified it to yourselves as doing your job. That's what terrifies me. Dunn's eyes darted toward the cuffs on Elijah's wrists. He reached to remove them but stopped. Should we release him now? Elijah's eyes didn't move from theirs. Yes, immediately. And I suggest you check your biases before assuming the worst about anyone ever again, especially someone wearing the same uniform you're sworn to protect. Briggs exhaled slowly, nodding. He unlocked the cuffs and pushed them toward Elijah. His voice was low, almost ashamed. I'm sorry, truly. Elijah didn't take the cuffs yet. He waited, watching each of them absorb the lesson they hadn't realized they needed. Sorry doesn't erase what could have happened, he said, but it's a start. Learn from this. Collier finally met his eyes. We'll report this to our supervisor. Everything. You should, Elijah said, taking the cuffs back and standing straight. And make sure you're honest about your mistakes, not just to them, but to yourselves. As Elijah stepped out of the cruiser, the three troopers remained silent, watching him walk toward his car. The tension didn't fade immediately. The weight of their actions and the near catastrophe pressed on them like a heavy fog. Elijah paused at his trunk, retrieving his briefcase and laptop bag. One glance back at the troopers and he said, Remember this moment. Let it change the way you see the world. Let it change the way you see people. Then he walked toward the highway, confident, calm, and completely composed. Every step was measured, every movement controlled. He didn't rush. He didn't glance over his shoulder. He simply moved forward, a man who knew his value, his place, and the dangers of assumptions. Briggs watched him go, finally speaking, voice barely audible. We messed up. Big time. Collier nodded silently, staring at the empty road where Elijah had been. Dunn finally muttered, almost to himself, and we almost ruined everything. The radio crackled again, this time confirming Elijah's clearance and safe status. The words echoed inside the cruiser. Elijah Grant, active. All protocols normal. Stop detainment. Resume patrol. No one moved. No one spoke. They just sat stunned, replaying the events over and over in their heads. Minutes later, a car pulled over a few hundred yards down the highway. Elijah's phone rang. It was his supervisor from Langley. Status, the voice asked. Safe, Elijah said calmly. Troopers were unprepared. Details? He recounted the incident carefully. The truth now out, the supervisors would handle the paperwork, the reprimands, and the explanations. But Elijah didn't need that. He needed something far more valuable. The lesson had been delivered, and the men who almost ruined his night would never forget it. As he drove away into the quiet Virginia night, he allowed himself a small sigh. The adrenaline ebbed. The danger had passed, but the memory of those tense 12 minutes, the words, the stares, the assumptions, would stay with him forever. And far behind him, the three troopers sat in stunned silence, realizing they had not only misjudged a man, but had confronted a truth far beyond traffic violations and late-night suspicion. Something had changed, something deep inside each of them. Elijah Grant had left them speechless. But the night wasn't done teaching lessons yet. By the next morning, the story had already begun to spread, though not on mainstream news. Internal channels, encrypted messaging boards, and agency alert systems were buzzing. Elijah Grant's detainment had triggered multiple red flags at the highest levels. Back at the Virginia State Police headquarters, Trooper Liam Briggs paced the small office like a caged animal. Collier and Dunn sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The words of Special Operations Command replayed in their heads over and over. You are detaining a federal intelligence officer. They couldn't shake it. A lieutenant entered the room, expression grim. Gentlemen, what the hell happened last night? Briggs ran a hand over his face. We stopped him for traffic. And then, his voice faltered. We thought he was suspicious. You thought? The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. Do you understand the gravity of this? He's CIA. You detained a federal agent. This could have triggered a massive federal incident. Collier muttered, We didn't know. We didn't. You didn't know. The lieutenant's voice shot through the office. You didn't know, and yet you treated him like a criminal. You handcuffed him, searched his belongings. And for what? Because he was driving at night. Because he's black. The room went silent. That one line hung in the air like a verdict. Not loud, not public, but unavoidable. It cut deeper than any reprimand could. Meanwhile, Elijah was already back in his secure apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, reviewing the incident on his personal secure line. He knew the potential damage of what happened. One misstep from the troopers could have escalated into a physical confrontation or worse. But now the focus was on containment, reporting, and ensuring the men responsible understood the consequences, not just administratively, but personally. Special Operations Command issued a strict directive, a full internal review of the stop. All 3 troopers were immediately suspended pending investigation. The language was clear, unambiguous, and scathing. It called out the assumptions, biases, and lack of verification that had led to the incident. Briggs, Collier, and Dunn were left to stew in the reality of their actions. Each one replayed the detainment from their perspective, seeing Elijah's calm, steady eyes, and the way he had spoken, sharp, precise, and uncompromising. The racial undertones of their comments and assumptions hit them hard. I never realized, Collier whispered one evening to Dunn in the break room. I didn't. He didn't fit the pattern, and I filled in the blanks myself. Dunn shook his head. We let our assumptions lead, and almost ruined someone's life. He could have called this in or worse. Briggs remained silent, staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost ashamed. And we'll never forget it. Not for the rest of our careers. Not ever. At the same time, Elijah's phone buzzed with encrypted messages from fellow analysts. Some were shocked, some outraged, others trying to keep the incident from going viral. Elijah responded carefully, instructing them to stay calm and allow the investigation to play out. No leaks, no public confrontations. Professionalism first. But inside, he couldn't ignore the tension building inside him, a mix of anger, relief, and disbelief. How quickly had ignorance and bias escalated into a potentially life-threatening encounter? How easily had 3 trained law enforcement officers assumed guilt without verification? The investigators later uncovered that Briggs had been influenced by prior reports of vehicle theft and minor drug trafficking in the area. Collier had been on edge from personal stress at home. Dunn admitted to a subconscious reliance on stereotypes when assessing Elijah. Every layer peeled back revealed a human flaw amplified by authority, unchecked assumptions, and a failure to communicate. By the 3rd day, the state police issued a formal apology to Elijah. Not a press release, not a public spectacle, a private professional acknowledgement. They admitted the errors, recognized the potential consequences, and promised retraining and sensitivity workshops. Elijah read the message silently. His response was simple: acknowledgement of the apology, but no celebration, acknowledge. Ensure the measures are implemented. That is what matters. The troopers, meanwhile, were forced to attend mandatory counseling and training sessions focusing on racial bias, procedural adherence, and handling situations involving federal agents. The experience would haunt them. The mix of fear, embarrassment, and realization that their assumptions almost destroyed an innocent career. Yet even as the repercussions unfolded, Elijah could sense the larger picture forming. This incident, though personally taxing, had revealed systemic gaps in communication, protocol, and bias awareness. His work in federal intelligence would now include reviewing these gaps and ensuring other agents would not face similar detainments in the future. And somewhere deep down, the memory of the 12 minutes on that Virginia highway remained vivid. The flashing lights, the cuffs, the words unspoken but felt, the racial undertones that marked the difference between suspicion and action. Every detail, every second, became a lesson he would carry for the rest of his career. For the troopers, the impact was equally lasting. They returned to the highways, patrol cars, and traffic stops, but nothing felt the same. Every driver who pulled up in the dark, every suspicious-looking vehicle, every tinted glance now carried the weight of a past mistake. Their world had changed, subtly but permanently, because the truth had been revealed, leaving them speechless. The day's sun set over the quiet streets of Alexandria. Elijah's silhouette disappeared into his apartment, briefcase in hand, calm yet alert. Somewhere far behind, 3 men sat in silent reflection, understanding that assumptions, once acted upon, could have irreversible consequences. And far above the quiet streets, a message from Special Operations Command echoed in policy updates and internal briefings. Never detain without verification, never assume without proof, and never underestimate the intelligence and composure of those you interact with, regardless of race, appearance, or circumstance. Elijah had survived. The troopers had learned, but the tension, the lesson, and the truth would resonate for years to come, a stark reminder of how quickly ordinary moments could become extraordinary, and how easily human judgment could be clouded by bias. The morning sun hit the parking lot of the state police headquarters, but inside, tension hung heavier than any darkness. Trooper Leon Briggs, Trooper Wade Collier, and Sergeant Harold Dunn were called into a conference room with their captain, a stern woman named Captain Elise Monroe. Her reputation for strict accountability was well known. "Sit," she commanded. Her eyes swept over the three men. "You need to understand exactly what your actions could have caused last night, not just for yourself, but for national security." Briggs shifted uncomfortably. We didn't know he was CIA. You didn't know." Monroe's voice rose, sharp and cutting. "And yet you detained him, handcuffed him, and treated him like a criminal. For 12 minutes, you endangered not only your lives, but an active federal agent's life. 12 minutes. Do you understand how serious that is?" Collier swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. We understand." "Do you?" Monroe asked, voice low now but cold. "Do you really understand?" Dunn didn't answer. He stared at the table, ashamed. Monroe reached into her folder and placed a printed document on the table. "This is the official transcript from Special Operations Command regarding Elijah Grant. It confirms his status as an active CIA analyst. His assignments were classified, yet he handled himself with complete composure. Do you know why that matters?" The three men shook their heads silently. "Because he didn't escalate the situation. He didn't attack, argue, or retaliate. He followed the law. He maintained control. And yet you almost made this a deadly confrontation." Monroe paused, letting her words sink in. "And why? Because of bias. Because of assumptions. Because of fear masquerading as authority." Briggs ran a hand through his hair. "We just thought we were doing our jobs. We were suspicious, and His voice trailed off. "You were wrong." Monroe cut in. "You were reckless. And let me be clear. The consequences of your actions extend far beyond internal discipline. Federal agencies are now reviewing this incident. If it had escalated, it could have triggered interagency investigations, legal actions, or worse." Collier's eyes darted to Dunn. We could have killed him without even knowing who he was." Dunn finally spoke, voice trembling. "We judged him before we verified anything, because he's black. Because he didn't fit the profile we expected. And now I see how dangerous that was." Monroe leaned back. "Dangerous is putting it lightly. You assumed the worst, acted without facts, and let bias dictate your actions. That is not law enforcement. That is negligence." Briggs swallowed hard. We need to apologize to him. Personally." "Yes," Monroe said, "and you will. But understand this. An apology does not erase what you did. It doesn't erase the 12 minutes where a man's life was in your hands and you had no idea who he was. You were blind. And that is unacceptable." Meanwhile, Elijah Grant was already reviewing the incident with his supervisors. The agency was meticulous in documenting the troopers' actions, the timeline, and the potential risks. For him, it was not about revenge. It was about accountability. Later that day, the three troopers were instructed to meet Elijah at a secure federal office. The tension was suffocating. Briggs' hands shook slightly. Collier's jaw was tight. Dunn's posture was rigid. None of them spoke until Elijah entered. He didn't glare. He didn't shout. He walked in calmly, eyes steady, and extended his hand. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "you made a mistake. But mistakes can teach lessons, if you allow them to." Briggs swallowed and shook his hand first. "Mr. Grant, I'm sorry. We didn't know. We assumed. And You assumed because of fear," Elijah interrupted gently. "And because of bias. You thought my race, my vehicle, and the time I was driving meant I was guilty. That's the truth you need to face." Collier's voice cracked. "We were sorry. We acted without thinking." "You were reckless," Elijah said calmly. "And yet I'm alive. That's what matters. Remember this. Judgment without verification can destroy lives." Dunn finally spoke, voice barely audible. We almost killed you without realizing it. And I can't stop thinking about that. Elijah looked at them squarely. Good. That realization is important. Let it guide you. Let it change how you approach every person you encounter in the future, especially those who don't look like you expect them to. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of the near catastrophe, a lesson in bias, and the gravity of their mistakes filled the room. Finally, Elijah said, "You've been briefed, disciplined, and warned. Now carry the lesson forward. Don't let fear and assumptions rule your actions again. That's all I asked." The three troopers nodded silently. They had been humbled, shamed, and educated in one encounter. They had witnessed the truth, and it had left them speechless. As Elijah left the room, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. The lesson had been delivered. The troopers would never forget it. Outside, the Virginia sun shone bright, but for those three men, the light felt different, clearer, sharper. It illuminated the errors of the past and the responsibility of the future. Elijah Grant returned to his life, his work, and his missions, carrying with him the knowledge that he had survived not just because of his skills, but because he remained calm, disciplined, and aware under extreme pressure. And far behind him,